As a single dad, I give everything to my daughter. But apparently, that's not enough for my sister, who thinks I'm not a real parent. Here's why I said no to babysitting for her. I, 33M, am a single dad to my daughter, 6F. Her mom passed away shortly after she was born, so I've been raising her on my own for her entire life. It's been hard, but I've done everything I can to provide for her and make sure she's happy and healthy. My sister Claire, 35F, has 3 kids, 10M, 8F, and 5F, and is married to a great guy. They're both wonderful parents, but they often ask me to babysit their kids because they know I have a lot of experience with my own daughter. I don't mind helping out when I can, but lately, it feels like they're asking me more and more, often with little notice. I've had to cancel plans, juggle my own schedule, and rearrange things to accommodate them. A few days ago, Claire called and asked if I could babysit for the weekend because she and her husband wanted to go on a couple's retreat. I told her I couldn't because I had already made plans with my daughter for a special daddy-daughter weekend. Claire got upset and said that I should be willing to help her out since she has real responsibilities as a mother of 3 and that I only have 1 child. That comment really hurt me, and I told her that just because I have 1 child doesn't mean my responsibilities are any less important than hers. She brushed it off and said, I wouldn't understand what it's like to be a real parent because I've never had to deal with multiple kids or juggle a full household. I was really offended and told her that if she thinks I'm not a real parent, then maybe she shouldn't rely on me so much for childcare. I refused to babysit, and now she's furious. She's been texting me nonstop, saying I'm punishing her over a small comment and that I'm being selfish for not helping her when she needs it. Even my mom has chimed in, saying I should just let it go because Claire has a lot on her plate. But I don't think I should be treated like a free babysitter, especially when she clearly doesn't respect my role as a parent. Ada for refusing to babysit after what she said. Update 1. After I told Claire that I wouldn't be able to babysit for her weekend retreat, I honestly thought that would be the end of it. She was upset, obviously, but I figured she'd get over it once she realized she'd crossed a line. I'm not usually one to hold a grudge, and in my mind, this wasn't even a grudge situation. I just needed her to respect that I have my own life and responsibilities, and they don't revolve around her and her family's needs. But Claire wasn't about to let it go that easily. That same night, she took to our family group chat. She posted this long message about how some people don't appreciate how hard it is to be a mother of multiple kids. She went on about how certain people only have 1 child to worry about and don't have to deal with the chaos of a full house, making it clear that she was aiming her comments directly at me. She was saying things like, some people wouldn't understand what it's like to be exhausted 24/7 and still have to show up for everyone. It was frustrating because she knew exactly what she was doing, stirring the pot, making it sound like she was the only one with real responsibilities, and making me look like I was slacking off by comparison. I tried not to engage, but my mom chimed in. She responded to Claire's messages, saying something about how it's important to remember that family helps family, and that it's natural for parents of 1 child to have an easier time than those with multiple kids. That stung. I mean, I get that my mom might see it differently because she raised 4 kids herself, but I thought she'd at least have my back a little. I responded calmly that I have been more than willing to help Claire over the years, but that I'm not obligated to drop everything every time she decides she wants a break. It was tense, but I thought I made my point clear enough. Apparently, I was wrong. The next day, my mom called me. Right off the bat, she was on Claire's side, telling me that I was being unreasonable for creating drama over what she considered a small favor. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the 1 weekend. It was about the pattern that had developed where Claire would ask me to babysit with minimal notice and then guilt me if I couldn't. My mom brushed that off and insisted I should be willing to sacrifice because I only have 1 child, while Claire has 3. She kept using that same phrase, only 1 child, as if that somehow made my commitments and plans less valuable. I could feel the frustration building, but I tried to stay level-headed. I asked her if she thought it was fair that I was being expected to cancel my weekend with my daughter just because Claire had decided, last minute, that she wanted a couple's retreat. My mom just sighed and said, "Well, sometimes we have to do what's best for the family," which really felt like code for, "Do what your sister wants." I ended up telling her that I wasn't going to change my mind and that it wasn't fair to expect me to be available whenever Claire needed a break, especially when she didn't respect the fact that I have my own responsibilities as a parent. My mom just said, "Well, that's disappointing," and hung up. After that call, I started questioning if maybe I was being too stubborn. I talked to a few friends about it, and they all seemed to think I was in the right. They pointed out that I already help Claire with her kids a lot more than most siblings would, and that it's not fair for her to treat me like free childcare, especially if she's not respecting my own parenting responsibilities. That reassurance helped, but it still felt weird to have my mom and sister both pushing so hard for me to just let it go. The tension didn't stop there, though. Claire began calling me every day, sometimes multiple times, leaving me voicemails where she'd talk about how she needed a break and that I was being selfish by not stepping up. She even threw in that she and her husband rarely got time together because of how demanding the kids were, and how she thought I'd understand since I'm single and know how lonely it can get. That comment stung, too, as if my life as a single parent is somehow less challenging than hers just because she has a husband to help. Eventually, I had to block her calls because it was getting excessive. I didn't do it lightly, but I was getting tired of the guilt tripping, and I couldn't handle her constant barrage of texts and voicemails about how I was letting the family down. But then she got smart. She started messaging my daughter's school, asking the teachers if they could have my daughter give me a reminder that family comes first. I was shocked. I didn't even know she had the school's contact info, and it felt like a huge invasion of privacy. I called the school right away, explained the situation, and thankfully, they understood and said they'd ignore any further messages from her. After that, I felt I had no choice but to distance myself. I told Claire that she was crossing boundaries, and that if she couldn't respect the fact that I'm a single dad with my own life, then we might need to take a break from seeing each other so often. She reacted just like I expected. She blew up, called me selfish, and told me I was letting down the only family I had left. She accused me of overreacting, said I was acting petty just because of one small comment, and that I was isolating myself because I'm too sensitive. That one got under my skin, and I'll admit I responded a bit more harshly than I should have. I told her that her small comment had been disrespectful, and that if she couldn't appreciate how hard I worked to be there for her when she needed help, then maybe she should find someone else to rely on. She just replied, "Fine," and hung up. It's been a few days now, and I haven't heard from her since. Part of me feels relieved, but another part is feeling conflicted. I keep wondering if maybe I should have let this go for the sake of keeping the peace. But then I think about all the times I've dropped everything for her, all the weekends I've rearranged for her kids, and I remind myself that it's okay to say no sometimes. I'm still torn, though, especially with my mom still trying to convince me to reach out and make things right. She keeps telling me that family is all we have, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm only considered family when it's convenient for them. Update 2. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke to Claire. I'd like to say things have calmed down, but honestly, it's felt more like a silent standoff. I thought Claire would reach out once things settled, but instead, she's doubled down by pulling in more family members. I'm now officially the selfish sibling in the extended family's eyes, thanks to her creative storytelling. She's made it sound like I abandoned her in her time of need over a simple couples retreat, conveniently leaving out that I'd had a planned weekend with my daughter. It's frustrating because it's hard to defend myself without sounding like I'm bad-mouthing her. And she knows this. She's painting herself as the tired, overwhelmed mom who asked for one little favor and got a slap in the face. The most recent development came when I got a call from my aunt, someone I only talk to a few times a year. She called out of the blue and immediately launched into how disappointed she was in me for letting family down. She said she'd heard from Claire that I refused to help during her time of need and that, as a single parent, I should understand how hard it is to balance responsibilities. I tried to explain, but my aunt cut me off, saying Claire's been struggling and I was making things worse. The entire conversation felt like a lecture on family loyalty, and no matter how I tried to explain my side, she wasn't having it. My mom has also been relentless. She's still siding with Claire and now keeps reminding me that it's just one weekend and family needs to stick together. She's brought up the fact that Claire and her husband never ask for much, which is wildly untrue, but impossible to argue. According to her, I owe Claire this support because, in her eyes, I have an easier setup. The worst part is my mom is acting like this is some massive betrayal, like I've abandoned the family over a petty grudge. I tried one last time to explain that I had a special weekend planned with my daughter, something I'd already told Claire before she asked me to babysit. My mom just sighed and said, "You're acting like a martyr, like you're the only one who has it hard." That one hit hard, especially coming from her. Meanwhile, Claire's gotten even more creative. She started posting vague statuses on social media, talking about how certain people don't understand what it means to be a supportive sibling, how family should come first. She's getting sympathy from mutual friends and other family members who have no idea what's really going on. I feel like I'm being set up as the villain here, and it's honestly draining. I don't want to get dragged into a social media battle, but it's hard to stay quiet when people are clearly buying into her narrative. The breaking point came last week, when I found out that Claire had gone a step further and reached out to my ex-wife's family. I have a decent relationship with them for my daughter's sake, and we see them a few times a year. Claire knows this. Apparently, she thought if she roped them into the situation, maybe they'd convince me to reconsider my stance. I found out when my ex's sister sent me a message saying she'd heard I was struggling to balance my responsibilities and asking if everything was okay. I was stunned. Here was my sister dragging in my late wife's family to pressure me into helping her. That felt like a line was crossed. I reached out to Claire directly, telling her that this needed to stop immediately, and that if she was going to keep bringing more people into the mix, I'd have no choice but to go no contact for a while. Her response? She brushed it off and said I was being dramatic. She actually told me that I was blowing things out of proportion and that I should be grateful she was willing to forgive me if I just agreed to help her next time. The entitlement was unreal. She then went on to say that she and her husband are the only ones in the family who have real responsibilities, and that my refusal to help was proof that I didn't understand what it meant to be a parent. I was so taken aback, I didn't even know how to respond. I just told her, "If that's really how you feel, maybe it's time we set some boundaries." She scoffed and hung up on me. A few days later, I found out from my cousin that Claire had gone back into our family group chat, posting more cryptic messages about letting go of toxic relationships and standing strong even when family lets you down. This cousin actually messaged me separately, asking what was going on, and I finally decided it was time to tell someone in the family the truth. I explained the whole situation, how Claire had been relying on me constantly for last-minute babysitting, how she'd made that hurtful comment about my parenting, and how she kept dragging more people into it when I refused to watch her kids that weekend. My cousin was shocked. She'd had no idea Claire had been asking me to babysit so often, and she was equally surprised that Claire's narrative left out all the context. She said she'd back me up if things escalated, which was honestly the first bit of relief I'd felt in days. That relief was short-lived. Claire somehow found out that I'd talked to our cousin, and she texted me again, furious that I was turning the family against her. She accused me of trying to make her look bad and said I'd crossed the line by involving other people in what she called our private issue. The hypocrisy was mind-blowing. Here's someone who'd spent the past 2 weeks dragging half the family and my late wife's family into this mess, yet the moment I defended myself to one person, I was suddenly the one in the wrong. I pointed this out calmly and reminded her that she'd involved everyone first. She brushed it off and said, "That's different. I needed support. You're just being petty." At this point, I feel like I'm stuck in a lose-lose situation. If I say nothing, she gets to continue spreading this narrative that I'm a selfish sibling who doesn't help. If I defend myself, I'm seen as stirring up drama. I've started pulling back from the family group chat altogether because every time I look, there's some new vague post from Claire about betrayal or family loyalty. The worst part is, some relatives I'm close to have been reaching out less and less. I think they're buying into her version of events, which makes me feel like I'm losing even more ground. I don't know what the end game is here, but I'm reaching a breaking point. I'm exhausted from constantly being painted as the bad guy just because I chose to prioritize my daughter and myself for once. The whole thing has been a reminder that, as much as I want to help family, it shouldn't come at the cost of my own peace and happiness. Part of me is wondering if it's time to just take a serious step back from Claire and maybe even my mom for a while. I want my daughter to grow up with a strong sense of family, but I don't want her learning that family means sacrificing yourself just to keep the peace.